Hello everybody, Robert here. Today we're working on my F350 again. This is a year 2000 model, 371,000 miles. We're replacing the front leaf springs. Let's get to work. So the year 2000 truck has leaf springs up in the front. You can see it running this way. That's it right back in there. I'm replacing it because I don't know if you can see from here, but it's frowning. It should be smiling, or at least not frowning, it's straight at least, but it is sagging, it is worn. We got a lot of miles on this truck. You can also see right in here where this is a stock size tire, but when I'm turning sharply, the tire actually rubs in the wheel well. The other problem I have with this truck is anytime I'm going down a dirt road or anything with some bumps, potholes, whatever, everything in the truck just feels like it's jiggling all over the place. So I know that the bushings and the front and rear of these springs, they're rubber bushings, they're all cracked, dried out looking. I know there's more flex going on there than there should be. That accounts for some of that. And there's a few other suspension components I need to replace as well, but this is a big one. And here are the springs. I got 2 rears, 2 fronts, all the mounting hardware. I got the U-bolts. I'm gonna reuse the through bolts, reuse the old ones. In order to do all of this, I need to remove the front brush guard, the front bumper, and then there's a mounting bracket in the front and rear. I'm gonna try removing the through bolts, but I know that in the front especially, there's no room to pull that all the way out, so you have to remove the entire bracket. That's why we're taking the bumper off. I've never done that. I'm not a mechanic either, I should say, and so I'm gonna remove the battery, or unplug the battery first, because messing around with the bumper, I don't want to be setting off airbags. I don't know how any of that works, but let's just take some precautions here, okay? One more thing, let's measure the height of the truck right now with the old springs and then see what it ends up doing. Now we're at 8 inches, so we'll be at 9 or 10 on that distance there after we put new springs in. That's my wonderful daughter Eiley in the background. She is 12 years old and likes doing hands-on projects just like me. Here, she is helping me by removing the bolts that hold the brush guard in place. That brush guard weighs somewhere between 100 and 150 pounds, and as soon as you remove those bolts, it will rock forward, so it is really helpful to have a second person there. Oh man, this is hot work. It's hot out today and I'm sweating. So I raised the truck up first by the axle, got the wheels off the ground, And then I got these heavy jack stands. I had some small 3 tons. They were not long enough, and I had wood blocks underneath. Then the jack had it all the way up. It was wobbly and scary looking. So I called my neighbor. Thank you, BJ. He helped me, and I'm borrowing his bigger jack stands. They're double the weight capacity and 24-inch vertical lift on those babies. So what I did was first I raised the axle up, and then I just went side by side. I have those jack stands there on the frame rails, and I used a bottle jack to take it up further. I kept going until the truck lifted up off of the floor jack that is holding my axle up right now. That way I know that I am fully suspended. I'm hanging the axle is hanging by the springs now. So I'm gonna support the axle, loosen all the bolts from the springs on one side, and then lower it down, and hopefully pull that baby out. I'm pulling that shock absorber out first. That's gonna be providing pressure on everything. I need that out of the way. The next thing, I am gonna pull this tire off. A lot of people say pull the brake caliper off and hang it. I think with the front bumper off, I can just undo the spring and pull it out the front. So that's what I'm gonna try. Well, there's my old one on the floor. I pulled it right out the front, as you saw. Did not take off the caliper at all. I've got my new ones over here behind me. I'll be sliding that in momentarily. First, we gotta take off these brackets though. The front and rear brackets had to come out. So I'm gonna mount those on my new spring and then put it in. Well, this thing here was fighting me, so I'm gonna hit it with some penetrant and then heat it up. I did not know this at the time, but there was a bunch of blue Loctite on this bolt, and it's a big bolt, so there's a lot of surface area where that Loctite is holding everything together. It took a lot of heat, and I went back and forth with heat to impact gun probably 3 or 4 times because I didn't realize that. So it finally did give way, but be advised, this one is tight. Check this out. So new one here, nice fresh rubber. We got a spacer in there. I don't know what that's made of. Kind of feels like plastic maybe. Down here, that thing is gone and it's hard to see, but this lower piece here is really worn. Also, you can see this thing's all cracked up. I'm going to show you the other side here real quick. You can see better when it's hanging. This one has not been taken off yet. But look at how much that's worn. I feel like that's halfway through. Wow. Cleaning off this surface where the spring sits, there's also a little hole down in there where this little nub fits. I want to make sure that's clean so that it sits down in there nice and tight. Got a dental pick for that. And now back in with the new spring. I've attached the hardware, the hanger, loosely. Because you want to tighten it up after the truck is lowered down on the ground. My method of attack for reassembly was to start with the rear bracket because it is up close to the frame rail. There is not as much room to work as it is back underneath the truck. I knew that I may have to wrestle this thing back and forth a little bit in order to get the bolt holes to line up, and I would have a lot more to do all of that up front than I would at the rear. Before attaching anything, I made sure that the centering pin on the spring was sitting in the little hole on the axle. And then I attached the rear bracket. There was only one bolt back there where it attaches to the frame, and at this early stage I put it in finger tight. I'll come back to tighten it to torque spec later after the front bracket is on. The U-bolts were pretty easy since the centering pin was already set in place, and they install from the top with the nuts attaching at the bottom. This is another thing that I only install finger tight, and will come back later at the end after the front bracket is on and torque everything tight. Once the rear and the center attachment points were finger tight, it's time to move on to the front bracket. Once the rear and center attachment points were finger tight, it's time to move to that front bracket. This bracket had about 1.5 inch gap side to side where it mounts to the frame. I needed to pull that bracket inwards toward the frame. My first thought was to use a large C-clamp and pull it in and hold it tight against the frame rail so I could bolt it up. But as you will see, that did not work. I did not have enough strength or pressure with that C-clamp in order to do that. So I went to my tried and true trademark method of force whacking it with a hammer, and that didn't work either. My thought was that there was just something binding up, preventing it from sliding, and because everything was under tension. That didn't happen though, because I could see it move and it would immediately spring right back. So I needed more force, so that's when I found the ratchet strap idea. I attached a ratchet strap around both of the front leaf springs and tightened it up, and that did the trick. Once the strap was in place, I could manipulate the floor jack and put pressure on the axle, lifting it up to flatten out that leaf spring. Since the center and rear connection points were attached to the truck, this effectively pushed that mounting point forward to line up those bolt holes on the frame. But things never quite work out that easy now, do they? I had to apply pressure on that spring in order to move it forward, and this is more than just what I was doing from the bottom with that floor jack. So I ended up using a combination of forward pressure from two different things: a pry bar inserted to the rear mounting bracket, pushing forward, and also my foot pressing on the axle. Once again, I'm thankful my kids were hanging around, because my son Robbie, he was 14, was able to insert the mounting bolts while I held everything in place. Here's a fun observation about my kids' involvement. Even though you only see them for a moment in time during these videos, they actually spend hours out there with me in the barn. The camera is set up in the middle of the room, and they're in the back half of the room behind the camera, tinkering away on their own projects, mostly having to do with wood carving or inventing. It's funny because it reminds me about how one describes toddlers playing. While older kids are engaging in interactive play, toddlers are different and engage in parallel play, and that's kind of what we're doing here. We're in the same room together, but we're doing different things, and of course it's a little different than that. I mean, we're talking back and forth too, but this is good times here. Okay, everything is put together now. Everything is tight except for this front bolt and the one in the rear. Those two are the two that you want to tighten only after it has been lowered back down on the ground and is under tension. Don't tighten it before, because then it puts pressure on in the wrong way. So I need to talk about the U-bolts for a second. Nice round U-bolt like this is for the rear axle. Up in the front, you've got two choices: either a square or a partial, what do they call it, a semicircle. I'll show you what I mean. I'm over on the passenger side. I have not taken this one apart yet, but I'm talking about this U-bolt right here. Now, if you're looking at that and saying, that looks like a semicircle, your assumption would match mine. You would also be incorrect. Let me show you why. I ordered semicircle. This is what I pulled off though. These must be square. And this is a problem because now that I've got these new ones in, the threads are not long enough. They're probably only halfway through this bolt down here, and I've gotten it pretty tight. You can also, I don't know if you can see on the camera, but there's a gap there in the center. So this part here is not down tight against that little saddle thing or whatever that's called. So I'm gonna reassemble with my old bolts, even though everybody says don't. I need to be driving this tomorrow, and I'm gonna have to order new bolts, and it'll take a few days for them to come in. So hopefully you can learn from my mistake and order the right bolts. All right, now I'm gonna go work on the other side. I'm not gonna film all of that because it's redundant, and then I'll come back and show you the finished product. This is my conclusion for the leaf spring video. I'm recording this about 6 to 8 weeks after installation. I have put 6,000 miles on the truck since then. It's kind of a lot. I had 2 really big trips. So there's a couple of things I want to address. First is, what is the ride height? It did increase. If you remember, I measured at the beginning, it was around 8 inches. Now we're just a little over 9. It was a solid 9 1/4 on the day of installation, but these springs will settle in over time. And I also have taken it for an alignment because I did a number of other things, and I wanted to have everything straight before I went on a couple of these trips. What they did tell me was I was to expect more settling and maybe even after my final trip. So now I should take it back and check again. The only thing that would change is with the springs settling, your steering wheel will change angle a little bit. On the day of installation, there was a large increase in your height, and the steering wheel, if it's normally straight across like this, I was like this, and so you had to make some adjustments. I'll show you right now what that looks like. All right, up underneath here you can see the pitman arm right here, and then this is your drag link. So you loosen those two bolts and twist that. Twisting it one way will spread these two bars apart, and twisting it the other way will pull them together. So the threads are reversed to each other, and that is how you change the alignment of your steering wheel. So you just fiddle around with that a little bit, make small turns to this thing right here. You just use a pipe wrench or vice grips right on that center piece and turn it. And as you do, your steering wheel will straighten. It has gotten a lot quieter too. It was a lot of the low-pitched creaking noises that I would hear. All of that is gone. That was the springs just rubbing on each other as you hit bumps and go over rolls. As you can see right here, I have replaced my Rancho 5000 shocks. That was, as I took everything apart, I noticed that they were really easy to compress. To put back in. So I knew they were getting worn. I went on O'Reilly's website to buy some new ones and saw that there was a limited warranty. So I called them and they said, yeah, bring in your old ones, we'll give you new ones. So I did, and putting these new ones in, yeah, they were a whole lot harder to compress. So I'm glad I did that. That'll put some better ride and better spring back into this whole thing. The last thing I changed was the sway bar end links. I put on some new ones. Mine were very worn, and that was fixing there was a lot of rattling noise, and those were real loose. You could shake them back and forth and hear the bushings were just totally shot. So it was metal on metal, and that was the rattling noise that you could hear. So all three of those things, I'm gonna have a separate video on the sway bar end link change. That's a very fast, easy job. Shocks are easy too, but this is a long video. Thanks for sticking around, and this is a lot of fun. I love working out here. If you like this too, I'm gonna be doing some more, so please like and subscribe, and you can follow along, and I will see you on the next one. Thank you very much.